Welcome everyone to Distance Learning with Common Sense. My name is Sue Thoughts, and this conversation will be posted to our Common Sense Ed YouTube page, to the YouTube channel, along with all of the links and the resources that are discussed on our chat today. We'll post those links in the chat so you guys can subscribe to that channel and get all of the Common Sense distance learning chats together. So today we are honored to have our Common Sense ambassador, Ben Cogswell, join us. Ben, can you introduce yourself?
Hey everybody, I am Ben Cogswell. I am from Salinas, California. That's the salad bowl capital of the world. And I'm here with my friend Violet. Hello! And don't worry, I mostly will keep her nice and quiet over here, but, hopefully a little entertaining as I try to do for my kindergartners. I work in a school district called the Alisal School District, and I work at a school called Barden Elementary.
All right, so tell us a little bit about what your school is like, what your families are like, and what your distance learning situation is, in this time.
So we have about, I believe about 85% of our school is ELLs, English language learner, predominantly Spanish speaking. I'd say like 98% Spanish speaking. We have a lot of mixed, professions for our parents, but we do have quite a bit in the salad bowl capital of the world. We do have quite a bit of farm worker families, migrant families. We are 100% free and reduced lunch. And so definitely we have some kids that come from some multifamily homes, maybe living in the garage for some of them. Some of them, of course, are a little better off, but definitely a mixture as far as our students. Now, I got to say I've been very blessed with our whole one-to-one situation. Because
even before you started with the distance learning, you guys were using a lot of technology in your classroom, possibly at home?
Yeah. Yes. And so I started actually, so I am a kindergarten teacher now, but currently before this, I was kind of like the TOSA in our district for educational technology. And I helped kind of start that program, which has now been taken over. I'm going to pause here, just make sure.
Oh, here we go.
You good? Yeah, I'll pause. I'm going to see if I have to, I may have to jump on this other network. I have my secret network here at home. But anyways, I was a technology TOSA for 4 years before in my district. And so that definitely helped me with some of my skill set. And I jumped into kindergarten, and our whole district is one-to-one. Our whole district is one-to-one Chromebooks, and we are actually unique in that our kids take home the Chromebooks. One of our former superintendents really wanted to give our students kind of like a middle or upper class education. And he did that by sending home all these devices. And we've been doing that for 5-6 years now.
Right. So when you started with all this distance learning, there were certainly things that you had to get used to. I mean, it's not like you always teach from home, right? But your students were used to a lot of the technology and used to some of the tools and the techniques that you're using in your classroom.
It definitely made it a lot easier for me to transition because, kids were already taking the devices home. Kids were already able to log in by themselves. Kids were already using a lot of the tools, right? So none of the tools are really new to my students that are at home, right? They know how to use them, maybe the way that they're different using them, but that's definitely been helpful.
Yeah. And so I know that some of the things that we've been seeing with a lot of teachers is they've had a lot of attrition. As time goes on, a lot of their students are dropping off. And I don't know, I know that that's certainly the case I've seen with a lot of secondary teachers. Have you seen the same thing in your classroom?
I have and I have not. I guess some of it depends on the time of the week. I definitely have seen pretty consistent. I have kids that'll drop in and drop out, but I have a lot of parent communication that I have going on that's pretty consistent. And I have some other ways as we kind of jump in as far as engagement that I'll kind of talk about, give you a few tips that may help. But I definitely think it helps being a kindergarten teacher. I definitely see it being harder for some of the older kids, right? But the biggest thing I'll say is parents are definitely a really important part of this equation.
Well, that's the biggest thing that I want to get out of you today is I want to hear about that engagement and about some of the things that you're doing. When I heard about some of these, I wanted to make sure that we covered a lot of these ideas. So, for example, we could start with Violet and some of the things that you're doing to keep your kids wanting to come back, right? How does that help? What does that do?
And I think it's hard. You got to have them like during these, and that's why I have things like a puppet and an astronaut helmet, right? And some of the things I try to do in there is we got to try to make these little short meetings engaging. And I do a lot of teaching, right? In there, but I try to start off with fun and I try to end with fun, right? And if all it takes is me being a little silly and having like a little puppet here, right? That's what it takes. Or putting on an astronaut helmet, and I can even, right? It just you have to keep it fun, and you really have to let your personality show, I think. And maybe it's not puppets and astronauts, but is trying to just try to get them in there. So yeah. And it's not easy. As I said, some kids show up some days, some of them don't. Some kids do their work more days than others. But definitely I think there's a few reasons, as you mentioned. We could talk about this for a long time.
Yeah, I guess I'm just wondering, like, what is your typical, what does that look like when you're teaching? You said you had a couple of meetings that are available for your kids. What are you doing during those meetings? What does that instruction look like?
So I'll kind of reference a few of these resources. And again, I know there are some in the slides that are going to be shared, but number one, we have coachben.org. And I know one of my friends will probably drop that in the chat, coachben.org. That's one resource where you can see a little bit about like my schedule and stuff that I share. And the other one is you can go to, thank you, Edie, by the way, shout out to Edie Porter, who's also a Monterey friend of mine, kindrockets.org, kindrockets.org. So my daily schedule is the biggest thing that drives me is I need to, like, as you know, Sue, I have 4 children at home, right? And literally if you go in my hallway, I have a disco light in my hallway that we put in there. Like when we're doing important meetings, the disco light is on in the hallway. And that's where my kids know, like, hey, dad's doing something important. I have 4 kids at home. And so I really try to think about what's going to be doable for them, right? What do I see that's hard as a parent and family to manage? And so I think that's part of it, is we really have to be cognizant of not overloading families and parents. And I think sometimes that drives them away. And that's a really fine list. That's a really fine balance, I should say, to whatever you're going to put on there. It's a big balance to maintain that.
So is the disco light on right now? That's what
Yeah, it is on in the hallway right now.
So nobody's going to disturb you unless it's an emergency.
Oh, you never know. I was doing one of these for the Q session, and I just had my kids run in and they had to ask me about playing video games. And I'm like, really, guys? Like, that's what you came in and interrupted me for, is asking to play video games. But it happens, right? And I'll show you. You guys want to look behind it? Here's what I'm going to do for you, okay? You want to see where I am right now? I'm going to turn my virtual background off here if I can, because I'm going to let the lights down, see if I can get this. Okay, so now you see the green screen behind me. Are you ready for this? I am actually, right? Normally we wouldn't share like this. I am actually in a bathroom, and I am in a closet in a bathroom, right? Because one of the things we've tried to do is we've tried to find spaces. And so I'm in a very small place. Yes, I'm in a closet in a bathroom. I have this little, there's like a curtain rod, a shower curtain rod behind me that I pull up and down, and boom. Then you don't see my bathroom. But some of it is I show you this because it's the reality of teaching at home. Right? I'm in a bathroom in the back of our house. Luckily, the toilet is in a different like little door. You can shut it. And that's actually, if you watch my time lapse of my butterflies, the butterflies are set up next to the toilet. You can find that on the Kinder Rockets Facebook page. I'll be live streaming my butterflies after lunch on my Facebook page.
I know. I watch that butterfly feeding every day. Check in on them. They're getting real nice and juicy, real good and fat. And so I know that you mentioned one of the things that you're doing when you're teaching is you actually do a lot of instruction that doesn't have kids looking at a screen. What do you mean? What are you doing?
So I'm very lucky. I have if you have a document camera, bring it home. If not, Google it. You can turn your phone into a document camera. This is actually what we did today, right? I hooked on my document camera, and if you ever want to see any of my lessons, you can view all of them at kindrockets.org. I record them for my parents, and I blur out all student information. So one of the things I really see is, as I try to be cognizant of this, is sometimes I've seen, like, again, using my own kids for examples, I see them kind of sitting on their computer and they're just kind of listening to their teacher, right? And so I'm really kind of thinking, like, how can I make sure my kids are engaged, right? Not just sitting there, like, being like, listening. And so I found that when we can take the off-screen activities, like here, all we did today in about a half an hour was draw this picture, right? I don't know, you can see we have petals. We labeled some petals. Tomorrow we'll do some writing on this. And so all we did today is draw. And I feel like it really kind of holds their engagement. I feel like at any level, like this is a time to sketch note. Get your kids drawing, right? Get them engaged. Even if they're watching a pre-recorded video of you, try to work on that. And so hopefully that will be helpful. That tip is getting the kids off the screen. I talked about this before, like this whole idea of these 3D tasks. And I use Google Meet for my live sessions. I have 2 videos, by the way, on my site of kind of how I use it. I'm working on a third because I've gotten a lot of questions on those. And so try to take some of those activities off there.
So you have kids actually, like, you know, as I'm watching you, I'm listening to you, you're coaching me through a process, and I'm working on my letters, right? And you're showing them physically, you know, what it is that they should be mimicking, you know, and you're able to show that on the screen. They're not looking at your face all the time. They're looking at what your hands are doing with that document camera.
Yeah, and so the document camera has been really helpful. They look on the screen. I'm able to kind of do both of them. And again, I think that just helps them. Like I definitely noticed some of my own lessons. And so just so you guys know, I have 28 kindergartners. I haven't gotten all 28 in. I got about 5 without the internet. So we're sending home some paper packets for them, and we're trying to get them hotspots. So they're not all in there, but I found that when they are in there, when I have lessons that they're having write them, I find that they're just a lot more engaged rather than just sitting in there. And so I try to get them up. I try to get them dancing. I try to get them moving. We played like Simon Says the other day, right? Just to kind of get them moving. Yeah.
Yeah. And I know that another thing that we had mentioned was the overuse of that mute button. Right. And classroom management must be kind of squirrely, right? You've got all these kids how many kids are there? What does that look like? And how do you maintain engagement or control? I don't know. Do you want control? What does that look like?
So I have the biggest, I've had about 18 kindergartners. And so it's definitely one thing I really try to say is like, a few things I'll say on this, and this is something I've really been thinking a lot about lately. We really got to try to do our best to treat it like the classroom, right? I know a lot of teachers in the beginning, it's easier just to mute all your students because you can focus. But look, I can hit this mute button right here. I don't know if my students are listening. If that mute button is on, how do I know they're listening? They could be doing whatever because I can't always see my screen. I have some tips, right? And so I only really do the mute button like if I have to. Right? If I really have to, like baby brother's crying in the background, maybe you should mute, right? It's been a little challenging this week because my kids got sent home with these microphones. And so now they're having all these microphones next to their mouth and they're rubbing them and they're playing with them. But rather than just having it on mute, right? Now I got to think about how can this new thing, how can I get kids to practice? So now my next thing is making a little video like with what to not do and what to do and making a little activity, just like we do in the classroom. So my principal came into one of my Google meetings and one of his comments he said is this actually sounds like a classroom. And in the beginning it was a lot because you got kids talking, they're all at different times, right? But I know that they're engaged, right? And so if I say, you know, hey, everybody say this word, I can't hear your voice. It's honestly just like the classroom. Not everybody's saying it. Let's do it again. Let's do it again. And just establishing those norms. And another little pro tip that I think is good that's been helpful is when I want my students to respond. This is just like a lot of teachers have one of these like bells, right? And so, all right, everybody say STEM. STEM. Good. Everybody read this sentence. And I just find it helps sync them. We use a lot of these things as a teacher in the classroom. We don't always bring them home. And of course, another fun one is my little sound effects board here too, that you can be like, oh, you know, oh, thank you. I know. Great job. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Or we have the, good job. That was a good answer. So I think, you know, just be careful that muting students doesn't mean they're listening.
I love it. I don't know why everybody doesn't have a sound effects for it. I know. I'm laughing out loud. Merv's laughing out loud. This is so good.
Just don't use this one. Sorry, don't use this one. Or this one. Yeah, those aren't good ones.
Oh, you know what? I think you get your kids' attention though.
You certainly can.
So the one last kind of thing I wanted to touch on is I have teenagers, and I know one of the things that I've talked to my daughter about is seeing the work of other kids. Like that's what engages her, is knowing that her work is going to be seen, and that, you know, that she gets to enjoy the work of other people. And I think that's what keeps her going. What are you doing for your kids?
So, I mean, so just so you guys know, me and my family a little bit, because that's always a balance, I think, for all of us. My wife is a teacher, but she's also a student right now. She was an ESL teacher. She's going back to school for music, but she runs an after-school program for my kids' music. And so Monday through Thursday, she's teaching as well. She's also right now in class, right? And so I have a 4-year-old, I have a 7-year-old, a 9-year-old, and a 12-year-old. I hope I got all their ages right. And so three of them have their own distance learning schedules. Actually, all 4 of them too, because even the preschooler, it's just the preschooler is the most flexible. And so, and you'll see this in the slides. One thing we've done being a teacher, we have a pocket chart, and we've taken sentence strips, and everybody has a different color, and we go through and say, hey guys, what's your schedule? What are the things you need in your chart? Right. And then we go from there. It's really about just routines, because with a family of 6, if we don't have routines, it doesn't work. And so we know, like Monday, Tuesday, my wife's class is from this. Right now, my daughter is helping make lunch, right? My 12-year-old, she's making ramen because I'm here. Normally, this would be my day. And so it's really building that routine. But I also got to say, like, so I try to involve my kids as much as I can in what I'm doing. So if you see some of my Seesaw activities, you'll see my kids in there. If you go and watch my morning messages, you're going to see my kids in there, because that makes them feel a part of it. And then I think they're a little bit more empathetic, right? To what I'm doing and what they're doing. We try to get outside every day. So after this, my goal is probably we're going to get outside and play about 20 minutes of basketball together as a family. And that's sometimes hard to do. And so we do that. So that's kind of your first question, I feel like, is just how do we do it as a family? Schedule, routines, work on it together, right? The other thing is, so the other question is, how do I try to keep my students motivated? You'll see one of the slides, they send out a little thing of star students. And those are basically students that completed my work. And if you want to see any of my work, you want to see what my classroom looks like, just go to kindrockets.org, okay? And so make sure to go there. But you can see like star students, I send those out every day, and parents get to know and kids get to know, right? If you go to my Facebook page, sometimes you're going to see like really good examples of the works I posted and that my kids post in Seesaw. I'll actually post them there, doing my best to remove the personally identifiable information, but you'll see some of these examples there, and I share it out because I feel like I never thought I'd say this, but in a way, like Facebook has become honestly a little bit like my learning management system. I have Seesaw to connect with my students, but I have Facebook to connect with my families, right? And so being able to have that, because I mean, who doesn't have a Facebook account? Most adults do, right? And there's some other ways I connect too, but having that presence, like, hey, check out this awesome work from these students on the Facebook page. Here's the star students. I send them home to the parents. Good job. And throughout the week, you definitely notice more students being star students, but just finding, rather than being like, hey, your student's not doing their work, right? Because nobody really wants to hear that. I think just encouraging them, still kind of giving them that public avenue. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I that's perfect. And I think, using that Facebook to connect with families helps also kind of motivate your students to be able to post their work. They see themselves, they see that information coming back, they see it shared, right? It's all a good cycle, not the vicious cycle, right? So if we just put the link to the slides in the chat, and so we put that Google link in there. If you want to just copy and paste it, I see there's a lot of folks already in the slides taking a look, and those slides will also be shared in the YouTube channel, right? So all of the slides are there, all this recording is there, and they'll also be shared within the recording as we share it afterwards. So I just wanted to kind of wrap up and, kind of capture some quick takeaways here. So some of the things that we talked about, I think this very first slide is when it comes to like student engagement, getting your kids off the screen, get them, with their hands onto something, right? Don't overuse that mute button. Enjoy the noise, make it sound like a classroom, right? Listen to your kids, be fun, right? You are a kindergarten teacher for a reason. Clearly everybody loves you. and everybody enjoys listening to you. And for those of us who are not quite as talented and engaging as you are, I think something that we need to think about is like one of ideas, right? Any one of these ideas is something that we can use. I saw somebody share that they're going to teach their first Zoom tomorrow as a kindergarten teacher, and this webinar made them feel so much more excited. So that's a total win. I think that's a great win for us today. And then of course, highlighting and sharing that student feedback, showcasing their work is really something that I hope folks take away today. Also, even just being a parent, right? You're the ultimate parent with 4 kids. And if you can make it happen, then the rest of us should be able to take
Big
note.
shout out right to my wife though, because it is a team, and we would love to. And I just got to say, I love, and I know if we have some time after the recording's over, I have no problem answering a few of these questions. There's definitely a lot of them.
And big shout out to your daughter for taking care of lunch today, so you can do this for us.
Yes.
Good job, Sunny. Exactly. All right. So we're going to take some questions. Again, this whole session is being recorded, and we'll be sharing this. We're posting it to our Common Sense Ed YouTube channel, along with all the links and all the resources and the slides and everything else. Do we have any questions that are burning that we want to take care of?
There is one question that's right now in the hopper. It says, how do you deal with parents who yell over their kids and keep turning off their mute just so we hear only their child?
Yeah, I've kind of been thinking about that one. Some of those, I haven't had that specific issue yet. I definitely have a few kids that kind of unmute and mute themselves. Definitely, I think those are just kind of like, I had a kid, for example, that that was sitting there on his like video game system during the chat one day, and I said, I'm gonna have to call your mom. Right. And so obviously it's part of the parent that's maybe part of the problem, but I think kind of having that conversation with the parent, right, as much as we can. And sometimes it's hard, and maybe it's even at that, I've thought about, well, if it's really not working for a group of kids, I'm going to need to do like a small group where I only have a certain group of kids. Like, hey, we all have these class meetings, but I really need to focus on the other kids' learnings. And so just addressing that issue, just a general memo, to parents, or like a fun video that, we're going to do. And so maybe my next video with my microphone is not necessarily going to be me using my microphone. It's going to be like my little puppet. And it just takes time, right? It's hard for sure. I don't have an easy answer for that, but conversations, time, routines, and maybe that as well.
Absolutely. I mean, it is about setting norms. It is about communicating and being as inviting as possible.
Great. I got, there's a number of questions, but first time, I'm just going to ask one other one. How do we get families to prioritize their students' learning and get involved or engaged?
So one of the things, again, really thinking about my own teaching as well as like kind of what my kids are going through, is I really try to put everything in one place. So I have a lot of different places where you can go to find my stuff. Like, okay, my morning message, you can see on YouTube, you can see on Facebook, you can see on a website, you can see in Seesaw. But if I have my kids go to Seesaw, everything is there for them. They don't really, I try to keep them in there as much as I can. I don't send a lot of links out. I embed a lot of videos in there. And so I feel like that's been hopefully more helpful because they don't have to go to all these different places. It's all in one places. But I think for those like people that either are having internet issues or not always in the Facebook or in the Seesaw, that's where I kind of do my Facebook stuff and my YouTube. And just so you guys know, again, if you go to my coachben.org site, there is, if you're getting started from Seesaw from the very beginning, I have some webinars that I've been doing with my own district. I'm getting started from Seesaw. And just so you guys kind of know that are out there listening, how I told Sue this the other day, how I create a lot of my content is people ask. They say, hey, Ben, I'm curious about how you run your Google Meet. And so then I start to make a video on that. And so it's really just, I don't feel like I don't always go out and just make stuff. You ask me and I'll do my best to kind of make it for you. Obviously right now, some of the requests are getting piled a little bit down the list. But
you're a busy guy. I understand. Well, we will. Thank you so much. We know this is not the end. You have lots of knowledge, lots of tips, and anybody can find that at your website, at your Coach Ben website. And all of this information will be available, and you guys know how to get a hold of him. He's here for for your learning as well. So thank you, Violet. Thank you, Ben. And we appreciate
Thank you
your
very
time.
much.
All right. Take care, all.